This lecture is all about reading motivation and what you can do in your own classroom to help engage students and get them interested in reading. Students come to your classroom with all kinds of ideas about reading and positive or negative feelings about it. They also have all kinds of reading ability levels, and it's your job as a teacher to to find out about your students and figure out how they feel about reading and their initial levels of reading. Are they struggling readers? Are they advanced readers for their age? And that can be done through pre-tests or all kinds of fluency and decoding assessments in the beginning, or just kind of talking with the students about how do you feel about reading. We're also going to talk later in this course about reading interest surveys, and that's another good way to find out about your students' reading interests and levels. But students need help when they are choosing books, and they need guided assistance as they learn how to read. Sometimes we assume that students should just know how to read, especially in the middle school age. But students a lot of times need help understanding the reading process and what good readers do. Students also should be motivated to make reading not just something they do in school, but to make reading a lifelong habit and something that they can enjoy, something they can do to help relax, not just a chore that some of them may feel that reading is. Just like in any sport, students need practice if they want to become better at a certain skill. And so, just like any other sport, reading also, students need practice, but they also need help from a coach. They need guidance and assistance to show them how they can become better readers. And the MERT process that we're going to be talking about later in this course really helps teachers help students become better readers through all kinds of reading strategies and conferencing. You can also help students set individual reading goals. In the book, The Book Whisperer, the author talks about a 40-book goal. And I used this strategy in my own classroom this year. And while some of my students didn't reach that 40-book goal, I had some students who did. And I had a lot of students who read more than they had read ever before. So having students making their own individual reading goals. How many books do they want to read the entire year? And then teachers keep track of those reading habits and how many books they're reading, and then throughout the year they can assess and see, are they meeting that goal? Another important part of reading motivation is making sure that students are choosing the right books. So we have to think about why students choose books, or why anyone would choose a book. It could be that a friend recommended it, or maybe there is a movie about the book. I had a lot of students this year who wanted to read Hunger Games because they were excited about the movie coming out. Or it could be part of a media trend such as Twilight or Hunger Games. A lot of people pick books because it has an interesting cover. Some students enjoy visuals inside of their books, so their pictures inside. And some students pick books because it's a short read, which is fine. But I think we need to make sure that students are choosing books that they're going to enjoy and that they're going to be motivated intrinsically to want to keep reading. Along with choosing the right book, we also need to make sure that students are choosing books that are on their reading level. A lot of times students will choose books that are below or above their reading level, and they're not getting as much out of it as they could. I have some students who will choose books that are way too hard for them, and they get through the book and they have no idea what the book was about. And they think that they're reading just because they're seeing the words and turning pages, but they're not really comprehending what's going on. So teachers need to teach students how to choose books that are on their individual reading levels. And one way to do that is the 5-finger test. And the 5-finger test involves students choosing a book and turning to a page somewhere in the book, and they read the first page. And each time they come across a word that they cannot figure out what the meaning is, either through context clues or they just don't know the word, then they put up a finger. So if they get through an entire page with 5 fingers up, that probably means that that book is not a good choice for them, that it's maybe a little higher than where they need to be. Another way to help students choose books on their level is to know their Lexile levels, and you can do that through all kinds of reading assessments. And then a lot of media centers and libraries will show you the Lexile levels when you're looking up the books. So students, if you teach them teach them what their Lexile levels are, and then show them how they can look those up when they're in the library, that's a good way to help them choose a book that's on their level. And then another thing is just knowing your students. If you know a student is a struggling reader, you might not want to recommend Pride and Prejudice to them, or just knowing what your students are interested in and what they can handle, and again, getting to know your students so you can help them choose the right book. Here are a couple tips on how to help motivate students to enjoy and be motivated to read. One thing is to let students choose their own books. Just like adults, we all like to pick what we're reading. A lot of times when you do group novel studies, sometimes there are novels that students don't really enjoy, and maybe they would have been more interested in a different book if they could have chosen one. So letting students have that individual choice and choosing books that they're going to be interested in is probably going to make them want to read more, because it's something that they chose, that they want to read, they're interested in. Also, previewing books can help interest students. If you do book talks before you go to the library, or show a couple books and explain kind of a quick summary, that's going to help activate their prior knowledge and get them possibly interested in certain books. You can also use discussion as a way to allow students to respond to what they're reading. A lot of students really want to interact with their peers, and so having them get excited that they're going to be able to talk about this book that they're reading with their peers, that's a good way to encourage them. Also, modeling good reading practices and discussing these strategies is a good way to help students. When you're conferencing with students, you can explain what good readers do. Good readers constantly are predicting, are summarizing at the end of chapters, are visualizing the things. And so having those conversations about what actually goes into reading and actually comprehending what's happening. If they're comprehending the book, they're probably going to be more motivated to continue reading it. And also, a lot of times we think that we should just assign activities like book reports and book projects and things like that, but that doesn't always enhance their reading skills. A good thing to focus on is the reading practices, predicting, summarizing, visualizing as they're reading, instead of just a culminating big project they have to do at the end. As adults, we read because we enjoy reading, or you read a book because you're interested in it, not because you have to do a book report on it. And so making reading a more realistic, lifelong skill is the goal that's going to help motivate those students. One thing that you should remember when you're trying to motivate students to read is that there is no simple method. Every student comes with different ideas and feelings about reading, and not every student is going to be motivated the same way. One thing that is very influential are teachers' own attitudes about reading. If teachers are excited and passionate about reading, that connects to your students, and they see that this is a real skill that they themselves could enjoy as well. Remember, people do things because they see value in the actions, they do things for pleasure, or they do things because They know they will gain something. So think about that as you're trying to motivate your students. What are your students getting out of reading? Spending time instead of going home and playing video games or being online or on their cell phones. What are they gaining from reading? And there is a lot that they can gain from reading, but you have to show them that reading, again, can be an enjoyable, relaxing, and fun activity that they themselves can do.